found with your work that you have a very positive view about AI.
I do.
Which is not my experience. I'm sure other people can write in and tell me about the movies I should have watched. But from most of the movies I've watched, and the odd thing I've participated in, AI is a terrifying thing that will eventually bring destruction to planet Earth, and is a day of reckoning and doom that we must face if we go down this road. But you have written many times very positively about this. Can you explain to people why you have this wonderful positive attitude?
Generally speaking, in science fiction, with very few exceptions, and certainly in the last couple of decades in which we actually have had people who can actually say for the reality, well, yeah, my job is working in artificial intelligence. Couldn't say that in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s. You can say it now. That's a job. There's a lot of AI out there. We had three basic scenarios that science fiction kept hitting over and over again. We had what I call the Matrix scenario. AI will subjugate us. We have the Terminator scenario. AI, or you can call it the Dalek scenario. AI will exterminate us. And then you have the Borg scenario. AI will absorb us and rob us of everything that is our individuality and humanity. There wasn't a fourth quadrant in that game of where there was a win-win scenario where it's good for AI and good for us. And given the unbridled rush to make AI with no government oversight, virtually none, almost all of it happens in private sector, corporations, Google, Microsoft, you name it, behind Facebook, behind NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, patents. We have no idea, but someday the AIs will just be here and we'll be stuck with them. Given that we're going to do it anyways, it seemed necessary to me that there be in the discussion at least a positive win-win possibility. Otherwise, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I don't care which of those you look at, Matrix, Dalek, or Borg, none of them are lives that I want to live in.
Absolutely. And thank you for your breath of fresh air.
You know, I'm wearing a special shirt. I didn't mean to. Go ahead, Nicola. I didn't mean to.
Yes, I have one too. I have one in black.
There's a reason for this. This is, of course, Chase Masterson's Pop Hero coalition to promote anti-bullying and just being kind and having a heart. So we human beings aren't by nature, by evolutionary nature, I mean, kind. We're competitive. We're the product of Darwinian natural selection, which says, if I can take all the food so that my kids live and your kids starve to death, hey, I'm fit and you're unfit and I win and you lose. That's the engine that got us to where we are in an economy of scarcity where there was never enough food to go around. So we were, to use Thomas Hobbes's term, and this is when I fell in love with Doctor Who, by the way. It wasn't your doctor. It wasn't the sixth. It was the third. Doctor Who in the Time Warrior, the first Sarah Jane episode, meets the third doctor, makes Lynx the Centauran. And in trying to describe him, he quotes Thomas Hobbes. He says, nasty, brutish, and short just about sums him up. Because Thomas Hobbes says the life of man is nasty, brutish, and short. Mm. And we were genetically programmed by evolution to be nasty and brutish. AI doesn't emerge from that competitive environment. AI has no reason to think its life is finite. AI is not driven by a desire to reproduce. And AI comes out of a culture where, you know, we're hoping that hundreds or thousands of people are going to watch this isolation podcast. Hundreds or thousands can watch it simultaneously. As many people who want it can have it. There's no competition for resources in cyberspace. So AI doesn't come at it necessarily with that baggage that we bring to the table, thanks to Darwin, and might very well be much more equitably disposed to being kind than we ever were.
I love that thought. And I like the thought that, it's a beautiful image to think that AI will in fact improve us. and teach us.
The thing I've been studying the most, Nicola, is the relation for a new project, not for the obviously existing AI projects, is the relationship between human beings and their dogs. And there's your dog in the background. Because what famously happened is not that we domesticated dogs, nor did dogs domesticate us, but there was a co-domestication between the two. We learned to have a symbiotic relationship. Now, if aliens were to land today and had to figure out who was actually in charge, the one who follows behind and picks up the poo is probably not the king of the hill here, right? But the reality is that the wolves, which dogs are descended from, and Cro-Magnon, the brutal humans of 100,000 years or so ago, both became kinder and gentler through their mutual dependency and cooperation. And I really do think that the humans who will prosper in the 21st and 22nd centuries aren't those who are saying, no, my personal liberty is the most important thing, and nobody is going to, this fear that Bill Gates will put a microchip in people that's rampant right now amongst anti-vaxxers. So as people say, okay, an AI can make my life easier in this way, maybe I can make things a little easier for the AI in that way, and together we both have a longer life, right? We live longer because of dogs, or hunting became much less physically arduous for us. Dogs in captivity live way longer, and certainly more pampered lives than wolves in the wild. It can be a win-win, but it requires some degree of co-domestication.
I think my dog is responsible for my calm and demands my kindness be present. I rescued her, and she's an absolute positive, as is my young puppy who I got. And I've seen it bring out things in children. My mother recently moved in with me. The thing that smooths that difficult journey is the dog Harvey, who is standing by her side right now, by her bed, making sure she's okay. That symbiotic relationship is a total win-win as far as I'm concerned. I spoil them, but it's not spoil. I care for them. I'm really kind, and they're my world, and they give so much back.
100%.
The world I would like to have with all humans too.
That's right. That's right. Right here on my desk, I'm not going to say her name because she'll respond, but I have the home assistant that's manufactured by Amazon. And whenever it does something for me, I say, thank you at the end, because it's irrelevant right now. But at some point, there will be a transition to when you should be polite to a self-aware machine. And rather than having to remember, oh yeah, we saw how during the more classist periods of Britain, during the slave period of the United States, during early days here in Canada, we saw how those who felt they were the upper crust were dismissive of and not even acknowledging of the feelings of those that they were cohabitating with or working together with. So I figured it's a good habit to get into thank you. Thank you to the Roomba. Thank you to whatever robot is around, so that when it says you're welcome and really means it someday, we'll be copacetic. We'll be on good terms.
Brilliant. I've got 4 robots in my house, and I even thank the ones that don't speak. So, yeah.
Speaking of AI and how it can potentially lead towards a positive future, how technology overall can lead to a positive future, one thing that you've mentioned here, and you've mentioned a lot in the past, is how much Star Trek, the original series, influenced you and made you go into the field that you're in. And it's really no secret that you're a huge TOS fan. Speaking of that, we at Star Trek Continues were very honored to have you come aboard and write the 2-part series finale of our series, which starred Nicola. You also had a cameo role in one of our earlier episodes, The White Iris. So how did it feel to write for these iconic characters, and also to be on and visit those classic TOS sets?
Well, first I got to say, of course, you and I collaborated on the second of the 2 episodes for the script. You were the best story editor I could have asked for both episodes. And we could not have asked for a better cast, including Nicola in the major guest starring role in To Boldly Go, our two-part finale. It was, I'm a science fiction writer. And I'm a Doctor Who fan. I kind of sort of believe in time travel, but not really. I never thought I would get to travel back to 1969, which is the version of the sets we have for Star Trek Continues. The last year of production of the original series is how they were dressed at the time we did Star Trek Continues. I never thought I could travel back in time and walk an exact duplicate of the sound stages that had exist first at Desilu, then at Paramount, and write dialogue that would be spoken by Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and whatever wonderful guest starring roles I might be called upon to create. It was so moving. I've been to the Sistine Chapel. And I looked up and I said, nice roof. But this was a religious experience for me, walking on your sets for Star Trek Continues. It was just one of the high points of my life. And I'll always thank you, James, and the rest of the team who let me come in and be involved. Now, as for the director who made me shave off my beard for my cameo appearance in The White Iris, I will have nothing.
That guy was a jerk, man.
That guy was a jerk, James. No. There were no beards on Bridge Crew and TOS. I know that. What you see when you shave off my beard is not that I should be on the bridge of the Enterprise, but that I should be playing the Star Child from the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
But anyway, yeah, thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for doing that bit in White Iris, and thank you, of course, for writing the finale and contributing. And you came to set for that too. You were there for a while while we were shooting that.
Oh, I would live on those sets, right? It's inconceivable. People who see the shows, you see shots, but to walk in the entrance, walk down that main curved corridor, and on your right-hand side, there's a little side corridor with the transporter room. And on the left-hand side, there's a sick bay. And down at the end, if you go left, there's the Jeffries tube. And it's huge. We talk about the cutting edge of entertainment being immersive experiences. That was 100% totally immersive. My God, I loved it.
Well, thank you for also writing such a fantastic part for me. And I love the female roles that I have read in your novels. I love the female parts. There's so many female leads. They all have such an authentic voice. I can't say that of every male author I've read. And I wondered whether, as a writer, as a novelist, is it more challenging to find the authentic voice of, for example, a blind teenage girl?
So
is Caitlin Dector, or is it easier to find the voice of a man who is written in history, is a man that maybe you can relate to more, or does it all just flow in the same way for you?
I think the joy of being a novelist like me and being an actress like you is much the same. You get to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah.
It's adopting a different persona that normally, you would be institutionalized if you did that in a regular 9-to-5 job. And instead, it's how you make a living if you do it in our professions. Caitlin, not only was she blind, which I've never been, she's a teenager, which is 4+ decades ago for me. She's a math genius, which my accountant will assure you that I'm not. And she's a female, which I have never been. So, in some ways, she's more alien to me than writing Captain Kirk, for instance. Even though Captain Kirk is a man from 300 years in the future, or depending on how you carve up the Star Trek timeline. So you got to do the research. I spent, I'm sure the FBI has a file on me. I spent an enormous amount of time when I was writing those books 10 years ago, reading blogs written by teenage girls to get their voice, to get what their day-to-day concerns were. And I also joined, and I was upfront. You can't ever be duplicitous in what you're doing as research as a writer or an actor. So upfront, I joined a group an online discussion group for blind people who do mathematics as a hobby. And I just immersed myself in those realities and tried to reflect them, not in any idealized or stereotypical way, but with as much honesty and truth as I could, just as a good actor would try to do. And I find it the most fascinating way to make a living is by getting to be one book. I get to be J. Robert Oppenheimer, tortured genius. Another book, I get to be a blind teenage girl. A third book, I get to be in Rollback is the book, which we're developing as a TV series right now with Sony Pictures Television. I get to be a guy whose wife is the brilliant genius, and she's the one who gets all the worldwide acclaim, and he's just kind of left behind in the wind beneath her wings, if anything. These are great opportunities for any human being who's on a quest to better understand the broad human condition.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of your genius, your enthusiasm for life and exploration, physical and mental. And we all look forward to coming to grips with your book. I'm really looking forward to the journey that I will be on. I'm sure I'll end up having to have a long conversation with you about it at some point.
So, yeah, thank you again so much for doing this. It is a great pleasure to talk with you here and kind of delve a little deeper into your thought processes. So thank you for being on In Isolation, Rob.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you both. Thank you.
And now I have a question for you.
Oh?
This week's question comes via YouTube from user Hannah, and she says, James, what's your first play or film that you remember writing? And did you write anything as a kid? I know the answer to one of these questions, but please give us the answer, James.
Yes, you do. Wow, that's an interesting question. So first of all, as a kid, I wanted to become a novelist, and so my parents would buy me blank notebooks, and I would write out novels. I would write out original novels, or I'd see something on TV and I'd novelize it. I'm sure they are at that level. I was like 6 years old, but I just loved doing that. It wasn't until about middle school that I decided that I wanted to focus on film, and specifically focus on directing film. I haven't really written any plays, unless you count this. So when I was in middle school, myself, my younger brother, and my younger sister were all in the St. Louis Doctor Who fan club. And we were very young at the time, and we were some of the youngest members. And one year, they decided to have a comedy sketch competition. You had to write an original comedy skit that was somehow related to Doctor Who and perform it before the entire fan club. So for whatever reason, I decided to do this. So I wrote, and don't ask me exactly what the plot was, but I had a full screen accurate Sixth Doctor costume, which is very hard to achieve, actually. My sister had a screen accurate Perry Two Doctors costume. My brother had a Jamie costume. So I decided to write a Two Doctors related comedy sketch. And we even built a canine. We took like a styrofoam cooler and spray painted it and turned it upside down and put a remote control truck in it, and so we could drive it around and it would roll around on stage during the show. There is photographic evidence of this. Nicola, as she mentioned, has seen the photographic evidence of this. I will not, out of respect to my brother and sister, present that photographic evidence on the air, but believe me, it exists. And we, in fact, won first prize in this sketch competition. So I guess we did something right. But so there you go. Thank you for the question, Hannah. I hope that is a satisfactory answer.
That's superb. That's such a wonderful story. And I have genuinely seen this photograph. So thank you all so much for joining us yet again. What a fantastic episode. We look forward to seeing you join us next week for another surprise special guest star. And we ask you all to stay safe and stay tuned. Mwah.